My name is Mike and welcome back to my hardcore world. This is my dwarven themed world that I have spent over 2,300 days building the biggest and most insane dwarven city hopefully you will ever see within Minecraft. And after a very small hiatus, I am preparing to jump back in with an incredible project today, building the west gate to our dwarven world, because eventually we're going to have mountains so high over our dwarven city that they will be impassable. So we need to start building a way to navigate through the city. And just before we get started on this video, I just wanted to very quickly say that unfortunately the audio is a little bit messed up within the first minute or two, but don't worry, it sorts itself out. But other than that, I hope you enjoy the video, and please don't forget to subscribe, as it really helps the channel out, guys. That's all I was going to say. Let's jump into the video. So the plan is to head over to our western side, as we need to choose an area where we're going to build this entranceway, and I think over here is the perfect place to put it, as it's a little bit elevated off the ground, so we can continue the slope of the mountain down a little bit, so the entrance kind of protrudes into the mountain, which is going to help make it look cool, as well as I want to keep it raised because I want to experiment by adding a little bit of staircase into our entranceway build. And the final build element that I really want to experiment with today is building an organic statue, but organics is something that I have never done before, so please lower your expectations. But seeming as we need to dig all of this out anyway, I'm going to go ahead and grab some stone just so we can create a very loose plan so that we can all get on the same page. And as we come to the end of that section, I've got a feeling it won't be the last mining we're gonna have to do, but let's hop back over to where our entrance is gonna be. And who's a cute little cobby muscled stone? Sorry, that was a bit of an inside joke. But now that I've actually head over here, I am a little bit concerned. I originally wanted to build it up here, and then I was going to connect it via bridge over to another mound over here. But I don't want snow to cover the entranceway because I think it'll kind of just take away from the design. So I think I may need to hover around for a hot minute just to see if it actually will snow here or if this was just all generated with the world. Well, never mind. I literally just hit record on a time lapse as I was about to just not waste time and start getting rid of all of these spruce trees when it started raining, so that was really well timed. So we may just have to kind of terraform the area a little bit and kind of build our entranceway maybe a little bit more over here, which means we can now jump back into a time lapse and begin getting rid of all of this above us. Oh, we need to now go ahead and get rid of all of this landmass that's kind of hovering over the area. Well, we finally finished digging everything out, and we've still got a little bit of tidying up to do, but so far it's looking a-okay. The only issue is this snow here is going to screw us up a little bit, but I have a plan. As you can tell, I have indeed gone and drawn an arrow, which is pointing future Mike to tell me to move the build over a few blocks. So moving on to the planning stage, I need to go ahead and mark out just how big I want this platform outside the western gate to be. 47, 48, 49, 50 blocks wide I think is good enough. But after what was supposed to be a very short distraction later, jumping forward to just grabbing a few bits of andesite and stone, alongside a little bit of deep slit. And I also think I'm going to experiment with a little bit of tuff whilst I'm up there, so we'll grab some whilst we're down here. And as we head back over, I'm sorry for the shameless self-plug, but I am going to be building a lot of farms in this world over the next coming weeks, but I'm going to be doing them, some on the videos, but also some over on Twitch as well. So make sure that you're following me on Twitch. But we jump into building the platform, and I just used stone as I knew that we were going to be building on top of this eventually. Before moving on to building the walls of the platform, where I decided to go for a bit more of a textured look to add a little bit of weathering. And with our workstations and materials placed, we can then get to work on building the staircase into the area. And the idea behind this build is to incorporate more texture and a little bit more variation in color to both align with the fact that the dwarves are going to have access to more tools, more resources, and just different variations of stone on their travels and adventures through mining through the world. And this also coincides with my skill level continuously improving as I am still relatively new to building. And one thing I've been trying to perfect is how the dwarves would light up the world other than using the actual lanterns that we've used in previous episodes. So I decided to build a more rustic brazier kind of approach for the dwarves and adding in a bit of a mix of blackstone in there to help add a little bit of a burnt sort of fiery charcoal effect. And overall, I think it turned out okay considering this has been a bit of a weak spot in the past. But I can't boast for too long as I needed to jump on to getting the base layer done for the actual design of the entranceway. And again, this was just going for like a weathered textured look. I did add some tuff in the bottom of it as I kind of had an idea about what I was going to do in front of this wall once I had finalized the design. But I actually ended up going in a different direction, so I may end up removing this tuff, but it works for now. And with the sun rising, we have completed the base layer. As you can tell, I used some stairs to kind of add like little indents in the stone. I wanted to make this feel like the dwarves were building on top of a flat wall that they've kind of carved out, which is why we've got a little bit of texture, but not too much, as a lot of the shadow and detail will be added in after. But I have left this gap open for a reason, in which I've actually realized a slight mistake, and I really should have brought this wall out like 2 more blocks, but it's fine. We'll just take this entranceway back a couple more blocks, which is no big issue as this is the smaller section, so that's absolutely fine. But before we can jump into this, we are going to have to gather some materials. And as a side note, that entranceway is looking pretty good from behind. Anyway, we'll jump forward over to our hobbit area where we can go ahead and grab some acacia wood, where I really want to experiment using this as some sort of shadow in my build, as I'm not really that experienced with texturing and shadowing, so I would love to try and use the acacia wood because it's got that kind of perfect grey scale to it, which makes it look really good, and it's textured so it kind of looks a little bit more like stone from a distance anyway. And hilariously, it's been that long since we've actually been over in this area, I completely forgot that we actually had acacia wood in this chest over here, so I kind of just wasted about half an hour when I could have been getting on with things, but well, we move on. As we need to go on some hunt for some sand, we're also gonna need some gravel, but thankfully we have a bunch of gravel exposed in our dwarven kingdom that we are yet to mine out, by the way. Then we just need to head into this little watchtower, which is hiding an entire squid farm, where we should indeed have a bunch of ink so we can make some dyes. Then a quick visit to our old base, because I do need some white dye, which we don't really have a great deal of skeleton bones, so this could take much longer than I anticipated. Never mind. Past me apparently foresaw that I'd need a lot of white dye and did indeed collect a bunch of bone blocks. So we're now back on track, where we can now begin to craft some grey dye, some light grey dye, where this can all come together by crafting some grey concrete and some light grey concrete. But heading back to the build, we have to go ahead and bring this entranceway back just a couple of blocks, because I haven't actually left enough of a gap, as I mentioned earlier. And with the door now complete, I can jump on to decorating and designing the outside of this entranceway. Picture on screen right now is basically the only idea that I've got to go off, and yes, if you're wondering, this is the only way that I plan builds. I don't do anything in creative. However, we're now gonna get to work, where we start with adding some pointed archways, and I love doing this. It's such a cheap and easy way to add a bit of depth and a bit of life to builds. And when it came to building the wall behind the first archway, something inside of me was just driving to experiment using tuff and all of the previous blocks we had collected to try something different with the shading. You guys are very much aware from previous videos that I'm not one for overcomplicating the shading or the texturing of builds, but you just don't know if things are going to work unless you try them, and I felt this was one of those moments where I just felt compelled to at least experiment with it, and we'll see how this all ties together at the end of the build. And this is where YouTubers like me normally cut things like this out of a video to make ourselves look better, but I feel like this is a good opportunity to give a lesson to everybody, and sometimes less is more. The original idea for building on top of this wall design was big chunky dwarven pillars, but as I was building these, something in me was just saying that it just wasn't quite working, so I decided to scale it down a little bit, where I decided to just build 1 block wide pillars, which if you squint really hard, still looks like a genuine stone pillar holding up the design. And this actually ended up being something that I actually fell in love with way more than having big thick chunky pillars, as just because of the scale of the build, it just kind of helped add a little bit more of an intricate stonework feel. Then we jumped up to designing the top section of the wall, and I felt like I wanted to actually pull this out another layer, so I decided to go ahead and protrude it out a little bit and add a little bit more of a kind of castle wall detail to it to kind of give it that top fortified feel. Or jumping down to the bottom section where I wanted to add to that fortified feeling by protruding out a little bit more and adding a little bit of bulkiness by adding some walls to the outside of the single block pillars. But we've now gone ahead and finished it, and with shaders disabled, I've come a little bit further away just so we can kind of get a little bit of a look of what it's going to look like from a distance with all the texturing and shading done. The top half isn't quite complete yet, so don't worry, we've still got a little fairs to go on the top section, but so far it's not looking too bad. However, if we just hop over to our first entranceway we built in episode 1, you can sort of see that it kind of protrudes out from the sort of area that the dwarves would have mined out, but this time I kind of want to go with the opposite. I want to make it feel like it sank into the mountain. I've seen quite a few dwarven entrance builds done now, which I actually think looks way better when it's sunk into the mountain, and I really just want to experiment with it, as we've got to remember this entranceway is a little bit higher than the previous one, so it's not going to be needing to be as detailed as the first entrance. So we'll hop down to the area where we're still actually in the process of mining all of this out and terraforming this area. I'm again not trying to do the best job here, just trying to do it very quickly to give us a loose idea of kind of what I want the area to look like, and it's also a great source of stone which we can use for the build. And what preceded was probably the hardest aspect of this entire build, trying to find a way to design this stone wall alongside making it fit into the actual lore was certainly a difficult task, and what I came to in the end was kind of going for a bit of a Grand Canyon look, where the rock face isn't flat and carved out like the first build, but it isn't rocky and sharp, it's just carved out by millions of years of weathering and ice melting, and I feel that ties in well by allowing the dwarves to have found the perfect place to dig out to for the west entrance by following a tiny river that was coming through the mountain, and it allowed them to follow back to an opening in the rock where they carved out the western entrance. And all in all, that's actually not looking too bad. I really like it. It could have been a little bit better, I won't deny that. There is some changes that definitely could be made. It could be a little bit smoother. And looking at it now, it definitely looks like I need to kind of do something with this area, because I really like the way that this bottom half has turned out, but we just need a little bit more detail in the top half, but that will come in time, because now I'm actually going to focus my attention on the podium, because we need a stairway leading down from the top. And I have just the perfect idea. And some eagle-eyed viewers might have realized by now that I've kind of lost my sword. I've kind of threw it away when I was traveling at some point yesterday whilst recording, and now I've completely lost it. So I didn't think I'd ever have to come back here again. And there we are. Oh, I'm walking on his grave. Oh no, stop it. Here lies Slashy Stick, 2023 to 2025. May he long live in Saudi heaven. But the show must go on, as we now need to get to work building a platform for the statue to sit on. In which, before we can actually go ahead and build this platform here, which I'm going to build it about halfway up from here, we've got a little bit of terraforming to do to finish off this area, as I've decided to kind of slope down from this little hill that we've got going on here. So we just need to go ahead and dig the rest of this out. And I will take a moment to say that this may be a controversial design choice, but I really like the idea of doing a slant and then building the stairs and the monument on top of a slant, because I feel like it adds a little bit of a natural element to the build. It kind of makes the landscape not look flat, as one of the rules that you kind of learn when you're very early into your building improvement game is that you shouldn't always level out your environment to make building easier. Sometimes things can just look a little bit better and a little bit more realistic when things are a little bit lopsided. Okay, I think we've gone ahead and kind of got rid of enough trees for now. We will eventually have to tear all of these trees back though, as this is where the mountain range is going to start, so we'll have to terraform this entire area at some point. But I have also decided that how we've got this kind of like natural curve going down here, I'm actually going to start taking it back up again and kind of make this like a little bit of a valley, you know, to kind of accentuate the fact that we are higher up and we are indeed in a mountainous region. I feel like kind of having like little valleys and dips and things is just going to help make this place just take it to that next level. But we can finally go ahead and start planning this out. Now, I was questioning myself whether or not I should go for a square sort of pillar or a round one, but I thought the square would look a little bit more dwarven, so we kind of have to make this big enough to kind of look like it's going to support a sizable statue, which is kind of one of the things that we've got to focus on here, which this could be big enough. I don't want to make it too big, as I don't want it to overshadow the actual platform here, but let's give this a try. Just heading up to the platform to have a quick look, and I think that's actually a pretty good size. I think we can actually bring it in one block. I don't think it needs to be that wide, so we'll do that very quickly. And yep, that's looking much better. It could potentially do with being one block. Nah, we're gonna finalize it. We'll lock it in. So let's jump in and get this built. I'm now moving on to the stairway that's going to go down the side of the platform, and we're continuing this design of 2 andesite bricks in the middle, followed by stone brick, and then the tiled brick on the outside, just to add a little bit of variation. So we need to kind of figure out how we're going to go ahead and get this done, as we build it a little bit like this, and then we place you like this, followed by you on the outside, and this should add a nice variation. But of course it is going to get a little bit difficult, as we do have to try and like curve this round and keep the design flowing. So I think the first job on the agenda is we have to go around and add a 1/2 slab drop, just to see on the inside if this is actually going to pan out, because looking at this, I don't know if we may have to kind of increase the gradient a little bit. Scratching that idea, the slabs didn't give us as much of a gradient as I was hoping to, so we're going to give stairs a try and see how we get on. It's almost steep enough. I wish it was a little bit steeper, but it does work. My only criticism though is if we head far away and we turn around to take a look at the stairs, you can see that it doesn't quite curve properly. It's got a little bit of a fault to it. Am I gonna leave it for now? Possibly. Yeah, maybe it doesn't look the best, but it'll do for now, and we can always come back and change this in the future. At the moment, this is just a placeholder, I suppose. So let's jump on and get the other side done. I then decided to dip it down a little bit more on the podium, leaving room for a bridge in the future. I found my sword. Apparently I had placed it inside our iron chest when we came to last repair our stuff, so... Oh well, that's always a good thing to find. It does mean we have to go and now desecrate a grave, though. Actually, I'm not going to desecrate this. I think it just needs one subtle change. There we are. Here lies Mike's upload schedule. I'm sure most of you guys will get a good giggle out of that one. But anyway, back to the video. As we've gathered a little bit more andesite, as we've still got a lot to do and the schedule is very slowly falling behind already on video number 1 of returning, I'm now getting on with building the pathway up on the top of the platform. Adding in a little bit of gold ore around the lights just to add a little bit of a golden dwarven touch, where it's not actually looking too bad, to be honest. After gathering a few more materials, I made some campfires to place down in the braziers, and using the remaining deep slate tiles, we were able to finish up the entranceway. And I didn't actually film me doing it, I just kind of got carried away. I was deliberating on what to do on this area here. I did think about kind of just making it kind of all stony and natural and just adding in some tough blocks and some mossy cobble just to kind of add a little bit of nature in there. But I really feel like at this point the dwarves are going to be a little bit more strategic and a little bit more neater in their builds, so I decided to go for a andesite and stone brick mix just because it to me looks a little bit more polished. And yep, I'm going to be honest with you, the sound of mobs crying in the background whilst you try to record really does throw me off all the time. But we put that behind us, as I do want to apologise. I seem to have woken up with a bit of a nasally nose today. Nasally nose. But we'll try and move past that, as I have gone ahead and moved all the materials down to the square base where I've already made a start on the dwarven statue, where I have to go ahead and be 100% transparent, as I genuinely wanted to jump into this and experiment and try and build this myself without referencing any other images or anything. But as you guys are probably aware, organics are probably one of the harder things to build in Minecraft, as making them look real is, well, realistic is very, very difficult when you're not as experienced as you want to be. And being a perfectionist, I just knew that this would kill me on the inside to try and do it myself. So I am going to be referring to, but not copying directly, an amazing tutorial by Meg Ray on YouTube. Please go and check them out. I'll put a link to the video in the description if you want to go and build the actual statue yourself. But it gives a layer by layer breakdown, and it's going to help me a ton in figuring this out. And as for the textures and stuff, I haven't quite figured that out yet. I know that I'm obviously going to do it out of stone to tie it all together, but I've got some ideas in my head, such as using deep slate tiles to try and simulate that chainmail effect. But other than that, we're just going to jump into this and see what we can get done. But don't worry too much. I realised very quickly after starting the legs that I had not got the right amount of space for this build anyway. So a lot of the elements of this had to be jerry-rigged to fit the space that was provided. So a lot of it is quite different, although the face is obviously going to be the same. The rest of the statue is actually kind of jerry-rigged. Then just gonna add some glowstone in for the eyes. This is to kind of simulate a little bit of gold. And for anybody that might be asking, Mike, why don't you just use actual gold blocks instead of glowstone? Well, I also wanted to just add a little bit of light so that it would light up the face as well. And I really like the look of that. I also just need to go around and add some redstone blocks underneath these lamps to fill them up. And for the new people to the series, we have a little bit of lore in our world that the dwarves use special elven oil to burn in these lamps, and these chiseled blocks we always place adjacent to the lamps act as a stone funnel. These are like stone bricks that are built in with a funnel where you pour the oil in and it funnels into here, and the oil lasts for a long time. It's just a good way of kind of adding a little bit more decoration and just ties it in with an actual lore perspective of how it's going to work in the world. Then all we have to do is go ahead and tidy up by picking up all of our shulkers, placing them inside of our ender chest, and grabbing my other Silk Touch pickaxe. We need to now finish up by doing a little bit more terraforming. Starting off with this grass over here. The goal is not to make this perfect, it's just to get rid of it for now. We will have to go back over this with a little bit more stone in the future, and kind of add a little bit of texture too, because I don't really want to keep this looking too bland. I don't know if it's the right saying, but I am definitely going to rue the day where I come to do a mega build where I'm going to need tons of grass and dirt, and I sit there and I say to you guys, you remember when we built that dwarven statue and I didn't keep all of that dirt and grass? But honestly, right now, I just want to get this tied up and finished, and it would take me more time to go back and put everything in the chest than it would to just kind of leave it on the ground. Alright, that should be it. I don't think I'm going to need to dig out this layer because it's going to get covered anyway. So we're just going to head over to our storage room, because as you can see, I am starting to get into the swing of actually utilizing this storage area. And heading down to these chests here, I'm sure, yep, I saw a bunch of stone earlier, so we can grab some of that and head back over to our western entrance, where we can go ahead and get started on giving this valley a little bit of a shape. It's not going to be perfect again, as I said earlier, but we'll just very quickly get this done, just so it helps kind of set the scene of the dwarven entrance being all rocky instead of just in the middle of a dirt patchland. We have finally made the tiniest amount of progress. But it does give us now a nice, better understanding of how this is going to look. We obviously need to cover this up and the rest of this as well, but that will be a project for a future video, as there's just one more tiny detail that we need to add to this build before we can wrap it up. But first, I am just going to extend this down a little bit because it's really irritating me whilst I'm looking at it. Yeah, that's much better. Not quite there yet, but much better than what it was. I'm also not sure what this is going to look like, but I'm just heading over to my glow lichen farm. Not that you can really call it a farm, but we're just going to grab a couple of stacks, as we're having a bit of an issue with mobs spawning, so I'm going to just see if we can place down glow lichen on the floor and hope that it doesn't impact the look of the build too much, but lights up the area enough so that we won't have any mobs surrounding our precious dwarven statue. Yeah, it does add a bit of a green hue, which is a bit frustrating, but it's fine. It'll do for now. We will come back, like I've said previously, and kind of make some adjustments. You may also be able to tell that it kind of just stops off here, just to kind of give you a little bit of a hint into the future. This will be a bridge eventually. This is something that we're going to come back to and kind of work on in the future. Next up on the agenda, so I'd like to take this opportunity to see what it looks like adding copper doors to the outside of the dwarf's garment on the statue, as a nice little way of just trimming the whole piece and bringing it together. I also went ahead and added a few copper pieces to his helmet, and I actually really like it. It kind of turns it more into a crown kind of feel, especially when you're kind of flying over. It looks a bit more like a crown, so I'm happy with that. And I almost claimed this build complete, but I thought I couldn't really do that without going around and putting on the finishing touches around these blocks. And as we fly to the highest point, that is looking pretty damn incredible. I am so happy with the way that this turned out. Of course, there is things that may need tweaking and changing. We obviously need to add a bit more texture, but we have ran out of time. And some of you may be saying, Mike, you haven't finished the weapon in the dwarven hands. Well, to those folks, I say unto you that it's your turn to decide what goes in the dwarven hands. And that's because over the last year and a half of making Minecraft content, I have had the time of my life. I have met some of the most genuine, down-to-earth people and come to realize that the Minecraft community is just a force to be reckoned with and is so generally kind. And it's the one thing that's helped me get through some of the toughest periods of my life in a long time over the last 6 months. And a lot of you guys checked in with me, and a lot of you guys have held me together through this time in the live streams. So I want to go ahead and let you guys decide. So If you have an idea of what you'd like that dwarf to be holding, go ahead and comment it down below. If you see the idea already suggested, then give it a thumbs up, and I will let you guys choose everything, what's going to be in his hand. And if you want to set me a block palette to work with as well, anything will be done in this dwarven hands as a testament and a thanks to each and every one of you. But thank you for watching this video. I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.